Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the improvement era from December 1970. And this article is entitled Thorpe v. Isaacson, 1898 to 1970. So, once again, I will reiterate, this one may or may not be in the public domain. However, if it is not, this is still fair use, in case you were concerned about that, since I am reading and reacting to it and not just reprinting it. So, anyway, moving on. Thorpe v. Isaacson, I've actually been looking forward to this one because he was in the first presidency for several years, but he was never in the Quorum of the 12, which of course is unusual. He was an assistant to the 12, and so that's kind of how that ended up happening. So I've been a little bit curious about him as a person, and that's why I am very much looking forward to talking about him, because I really don't know that much about him, except that he was an assistant to the 12 and that he was in the first presidency. So, and then he died in 1970. That's all I know. And I think that that's not very much. This article isn't even very long either, but hopefully it will give us some insights, and then we will see if we can find some more information. But, yeah, let's start with this article. Ironically, is the latest I am willing to go when it comes to reading articles aloud is December 1970. So this is quite the later article for me to read. Anyway, let's take a look. Thorpe v. Isaacson, 1898 to 1970, assistant to the Council of the 12, 1961 to 1965 and 1970. Counselor to the First Presidency, 1965 to 1970. First counselor in the Presiding Bishopric, 1952 to 1961. All right, so it looks like he was in the First Presidency and then was released after David O. McKay's death. And then he returned to the assistance to the 12, yeah? All right, Elder Thorpe B. Isaacson counseled his sons, if there is any work that has to be left undone, it must not be the work of the church. This remark characterized his devotion to the church, expressed in tremendous spiritual and physical energy. For Elder Isaacson, the principles of the gospel were the sources from which he directed his great enthusiasm in many fields of endeavor, in athletics, education, business, civic affairs, and the work of the Lord. Elder Isaacson was born September 6, 1898, in Ephraim, a little farming community in central Utah. His grandparents accepted the gospel in Europe, and it was instilled in him by his pioneer parents, Martin and Mary Beale Isaacson. An outstanding athlete in his youth, he attended Snow Academy, now Snow College, at Ephraim, Brigham Young University, Utah Agricultural College, now Utah State University, and the University of California at Berkeley. Okay, so he got around a little bit. Wonder what he got his degrees in. While teaching in Box Elder County, he met Lula Jones, and they were married in the Salt Lake Temple, June 16, 1920. Following their marriage, he worked as a teacher, coach, principal, and a faculty member at various schools in Utah and Idaho. He later became a successful life insurance executive, and one year was selected the most outstanding life insurance man in America. That's a very weird title to have. Like, how did you get that kind of commendation? The most outstanding life insurance man. Does that mean he sold the most? Or was he, like, the most just? You know what I mean? Like, Like, what does that mean? Elder Isaacson's civic and church service was greatly diversified. He was chairman of the church's Historical Sites Committee, vice president of the Board of Trustees of Brigham Young University, vice president of the Church Board of Education, president of the Board of Trustees of Utah State University, and a member of the University of Utah Board of Regents. Wow, that's a lot. Did he have a PhD? Like, I'm starting to wonder if he did, but maybe he didn't. I'm not sure. It doesn't say. Like, that's kind of annoying. Serving in government appointments, Elder Isaacson was a special consultant to the U.S. Commissioner of Education, consultant in U.S. Foreign Aid Administration, and a member of Utah's Little Hoover Commission. I don't know what that means. He also served on several business and civic boards of directors. Okay, like he's a natural leader, it sounds like. Okay. Elder Isaacson was sustained as second counselor in the Presiding Bishopric December 12, 1946, as first counselor in the Presiding Bishopric April 6, 1952, as assistant to the Council of the Twelve September 30th, 1961, and set apart and sustained as counselor in the First Presidency to President David O. McKay October 28, 1965. He was released from that position when President McKay died in January of this year. President McKay headed the list of distinguished speakers at a public program honoring Elder Isaacson at the Snow College Auditorium in 1955. When he was first counselor in the Presiding Bishopric. Yes? Interesting. As I see it, said President McKay, Bishop Isaacson's outstanding success in so many fields springs from three principal sources. First is his strength of character and integrity inherited from his forebears. Second would be his environment, his early life spent in this country. And third would be what he has made of himself, his own industry and effort. Okay. As a general authority, Elder Isaacson traveled into many parts of the church where his friendly spirit and enthusiasm were well received. His special attention to the program for adult members of the Aaronic priesthood stimulated efforts in this area on a church-wide scale. Elder Isaacson died on November 9, 1970. Funeral services were held 2 days later in the Assembly Hall in Temple Square. For Elder Isaacson, death came as a blessing at this time, releasing him from the inactivity that ill health had forced upon him in recent years. But even in his illness, he maintained a keen interest in the affairs of the church. Survivors include Sister Isaacson, a daughter, Mrs. Royal Joyce Tribe, a son, Richard A. Isaacson, 9 grandchildren, 4 brothers, and 1 sister. Okay, so his siblings. Sorry, that confused me. Listing them after the grandchildren sort of threw me off. Elder Isaacson's great enthusiasm for the gospel of Jesus Christ will be missed in contemporary church affairs. If there is any work that has to be left undone, it must not be the work of the church. May well be good counsel for all of us. Okay, so he found his church work very fulfilling, and he found that it was one of the most important things that he did. I mean, that's what I got from this. And also that he's a natural leader and has quite a bit of leadership abilities, or experience, I mean. So let's take a look. Thorpe B. Isaacson, there he is. At the Wikipedia article and see what they have to say. I'm going to read the whole thing because that one was not long, and I'm hoping that they have more information for us. I hope that this isn't very long either. Alright, well, let's take a look anyway. Henry Thorpe Beale Isaacson. So his actual first name was not Thorpe, it was Henry. September 6, 1898 to November 9, 1970, was a leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, serving as a counselor in the First Presidency to Church President David O. McKay from 1965 to 1970. Isaacson was born in Ephraim, Sanpete County, Utah, to Martin Isaacson and Mary Jemima Beale. Isaacson received his education at Snow Academy, now Snow College, Brigham Young University, Utah State University, University of California, Berkeley. They still don't mention what he studied. That is really irritating to me. On June 20th, 1920, Isaacson married Lula Mon Jones in the Salt Lake Temple. They eventually became the parents of 2 children. Isaacson worked as a school teacher and athletic coach in Idaho and later was a school district superintendent. He was also involved in insurance sales and real estate. Isaacson was a member of the Utah State University Board of Trustees. This could basically have been printed directly from the article we just read. In the LDS Church, Isaacson was ordained a high priest in 1941 by Charles A. Callis of the Quorum of the Twelve. Well, that's interesting, and that wasn't mentioned earlier. In 1946, he became a second counselor to LeGrand Richards in the Presiding Bishopric, then as first counselor to Joseph L. Worthlin in 1952. I didn't realize that there was a different presiding bishop at the time. In 1961, he was sustained as an assistant to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. On October 28, 1965, Isaacson was sustained as a counselor to Church President David O. McKay in the First Presidency. Isaacson being called to be a counselor in the First Presidency was unusual since he was not an apostle, but not unprecedented yet. However, President McKay had a great deal of confidence in Isaacson's judgment and past service. There is evident that Isaacson was already functioning much as a counselor to McKay at the time of his call to the First Presidency. Really? So it sounds like he just was very close to David O. McKay. Isaacson suffered a stroke on February 7, 1966, which severely limited his activities as a counselor. That makes sense. Alvin R. Dyer was added as a counselor to the First Presidency to fill the role Isaacson was to perform. Okay, so then they had both of them technically. Isaacson was released from the First Presidency upon McKay's death on January 18, 1970, and resumed his former position as an assistant to the 12. Isaacson died in Salt Lake City, Utah, and was buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Okay, that wasn't very much information that was new. The only one that we got that was new, in my opinion, was his stroke and like how he was ordained to the high priest by Charles A. Callis, which is kind of interesting too. And that he had served under 2 different presiding bishops. Yeah, that's a bit frustrating. You know, this is not something I do normally on this channel, but I am going to go to my own website and see if there's another article that is a little bit more illuminating. Yes, got some really good pictures of him, at least. That's good. All right, I think I'm just going to read this article from the Relief Society magazine from February 1947. This article is called Bishop Thorpe B. Isaacson Appointed to Presiding Bishopric by Elder Thomas E. Robinson, M.D., First Counselor, Yale Ward Bishopric, Salt Lake City, Utah. So this is when he was first called to the presiding bishopric. So this is more background information, not as much about his later life. But I thought that this has some interesting information in my opinion. So, Brother Thorpe B. Isaacson, who was appointed second counselor in the presiding bishopric December 14, 1946, to fill the vacancy caused by the death of Brother Marvin O. Ashton, was born September 6, 1898 in Ephraim, Utah, the son of Martin Isaacson and Mary Jemima Beale Isaacson. Born of goodly parents, he also can be justly proud of others of his progenitors. His grandfather, Peter Isaacson, was the only member of his family to join the church in Denmark. Okay. He crossed the plains with the pioneers in 1855 and was soon sent by the church authorities to help colonize Arizona. He later did much of the fine carpentry work in the Manti Temple and lived in Ephraim for many years. He served the church and the community faithfully until his death at the age of 92. Henry Beale, grandfather on his mother's side, was president of San Pete Stake for many years. While serving in this capacity, he took a very active part in the founding of Snow College. Interesting, because he attended Snow College. His grandfather helped found it? That's interesting. Brother Isaacson is a graduate of Snow College. He attended the Brigham Young University, the Utah State Agricultural College, and the University of California. He has 17 years of teaching and coaching experience with the youth of Utah and Idaho. He is more than favorably known among these many thousands of young people. A great athlete himself, he has inspired many boys to self-improvement. He has a very active and alert interest in all sports and the boys who play them. Like, did he study sports? Was he like a sports science major? Like, I haven't quite nailed down to like what he studied. Like, I know some of them may have only offered a single, course of study. But in general, like, University of California definitely had something else to choose from in the 20s. Like, it's just not clear to me. Brother Isaacson married Lula Mon Jones of Wellsville on June 16, 1920 in the Salt Lake Temple. They had 3 children. See, before they only said 2. 2 of whom are living at the present time. Joyce Isaacson Tribe, 23, the wife of Royal L. Tribe. At least they listed her name first. And Richard A. Isaacson, 20, now laboring in the New England Mission. Finer children no parents could want. Okay, so they had 3 children, though, they said. So that means one of them died in infancy, or was a stillbirth, possibly? Brother Isaacson has been outstanding in his business achievements. At the time of his new appointment, he was general agent for Lincoln National Life Insurance Company in Utah, Idaho, and Nevada. He was named the most outstanding insurance man for that company in 1944. Like I said, it sounds to me like he was the best salesman, but I don't know. That's just what it sounds like to me. He has a fine experience in the church. He was president of the Elders Quorum in the Yale Ward before being called to the bishopric. In September 1941, Brother Isaacson was chosen as Bishop A.G. Olafson of Yale Ward to be his first counselor. While serving in this capacity, he had charge of the Teachers' Quorum, and for 5 years this quorum led the stake. Led the stake in what? He is a fine boys' man. He inspires boys because he knows their problems and can place himself easily and naturally on their level. Well, that's kind of cool. Brother Isaacson is a natural leader of men. He places responsibility well, sounds like it, and he has the capacity to inspire men to discharge well their responsibilities. He has the ability to discern problems quickly and make rapid disposition of them. Okay, he's a doer. Okay, take charge guy. These attributes will aid him materially in the discharge of his new responsibilities, where great wisdom must be associated with great dispatch in handling so many of the temporal affairs of the church. Okay. Brother and Sister Isaacson have also drunk deeply of one of the greatest of spiritual experiences. They lost their first child in infancy. Their only son was stricken with poliomyelitis and hovered close to death for several days. In this time of deep tribulation came perhaps the deepest spiritual experience for Brother and Sister Isaacson. They came to know God, and God recognized their supplication in behalf of their son. Ever since, there has existed a closeness between this family and God that will only be further enriched by the experiences which will be forthcoming in Brother Isaacson's new calling. He will be respected for his ability, as well as for his deep concern for the welfare of his country and his fellow men generally. That the Lord will magnify him further, that he may meet the responsibilities of his new calling, is the prayer of all members of the church have in their hearts for him. Okay, well that's kind of cool, but so what I get from this is that their oldest daughter died in infancy, and that their son became stricken. Poliomyelitis, is that not polio? Is it not? So he had polio as a baby? Their son, I mean, not him. Poliomyelitis. Poliomyelitis, commonly shortened to polio, also known as infantile paralysis. Yeah, that's, so their son actually had polio. That's scary. That's really scary. I wonder if he was disabled by it. They didn't say, like they never mentioned that. So I'm not sure, but yeah, that's very scary. Okay, well that was a lot more background information. I enjoyed that. They still didn't say what he studied, but they did say that he actually had 3 children, that he overcome some difficulties, that he's gone through a few things, that he is a natural leader in that he is able to inspire others to, you know, want to do it. So that he's a boys' man, which so he's inspiring to young people. I liked that a lot. There are a couple more articles, but they basically just say the same things over and over again. There's really not a lot of new information. So I'm gonna let it be at that. But I find this person interesting. I just wish there were better articles on him. I feel like there's more there, but it's not being told. Like they're not telling his story very well. That's what I would wish. I would wish that there were better articles on him. There have been other people we've talked about that have great articles on them, and we get some really good insights into who these people were as people, but this one not so much. And yeah, I feel like that's a little bit sad, but yeah, anyway, but from what information we have, he sounds like a really interesting person and a really good person, and I would only wish that we could find out more, but you know, we can't have everything. So anyway, but I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and if you did, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.